everyone. My name is Lynn Walsh, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Trusting News Project. At Trusting News, we are helping rebuild trust between the public and journalists. And I don't know about you, but something that can be really frustrating is some of the comments that people say maybe about your own journalism or about the journalism community in general. So today, I want to help give you a couple tips to help correct those misunderstandings that drive some attitudes toward journalism. So first, let's look at how people feel about journalist role in society. This research came from the Pew Research Center, and it shows that 46% of people think journalists rarely care about people like them. It also showed that 54% think journalists admit or take responsibility for their mistakes little or none of the time. And so how do you feel about those figures? Well, you might feel frustrated. I know I definitely have felt frustrated by that people have so little faith in the work that you believe in and try so hard to produce every day. Maybe you're determined to try to change their perceptions or change their mind. Or maybe you feel empathetic because you realize it's so hard to navigate all the information that's out there on the internet and that they're consuming these days. And because after all, not all news is responsible, right? So what are some other misassumptions that people make about journalism? These are things that we hear from news consumers with the newsroom partners that we work for. You pay your sources. Some people assume that we're paying the people that we are interviewing. People assume that we choose stories that only validate our own opinions or our agenda. They assume that money drives news decisions or that we sensationalize stories to get more clicks, ratings, or money. They assume that we don't really care about getting it right. That's one that really hurts when I hear that because I know how hard every journalist I've worked with or spoken to, how hard they work to really get the facts right every day. The other thing that I've heard a lot, especially with TV journalism, you're just out there to catch people looking dumb or doing something wrong. So what we do at Trusting News is we try to teach journalists and news organizations to turn those misassumptions into information gaps. So if someone says that you have a bias against President Trump because your news organization endorsed or ran opinion content in favor of Joe Biden, or and then they say that that bias has led you to only cover negative stories about President Trump, let's turn those assumptions, those misassumptions, into information gaps. And instead, you could explain opinion content and endorsements and how they're separate from and do not influence news decisions. You also can explain that you don't look at stories as negative or positive towards a candidate. Instead, you cover what is happening and how people respond to what is happening, and that goes for all candidates. Some other common misassumptions, that your newspaper is one-sided because it covers stories about legislation focused on minority groups, homelessness, or police accountability. And you're only covering those because you have an opinion about all of those issues and you're trying to forward an agenda. Or that your news organization makes money by airing political rallies or speeches. So turn those assumptions into information gaps, and instead you could explain how you cover legislation. And you cover legislations that the public and your community know what rules and regulations might be changing. You could also talk about how you make your money. Do you make your money from advertisements? How are you funded? Are you funded by donations? And then how do ratings fall into that? Some other things related to elections to explain: sourcing. Who do you rely on for information? And again, by talking about these things and explaining it and being transparent, you hopefully will be able to get some of those assumptions and misassumptions out of the way so then people can consume your content. When it comes to sourcing, also don't forget about polling. The other thing, opinion versus news. How well is your opinion content labeled? All opinion content should ideally have the word opinion. Calling it a column or an op-ed, it just isn't good enough nowadays. And so when you have that opinion label, is it transferring when someone shares it on Twitter, when someone shares it on Facebook? Make sure that that label travels wherever that content lives. And so those are all the tips I have for you today. If you want to learn more, you can get in touch with us. We have a Trust Tip newsletter. We also have a new SMS text message class that you can take. And we have free election help for newsrooms there through the Election SOS program. We also will be around throughout ONA for one-on-ones if you want to connect. Thanks so much.